The Republican Party is in literal open revolt over the disaster that is the Trump-Russia peace plan. Just why are even the most staunch MAGA Republicans telling the Trump administration that they want to see Russia suffer a defeat? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. Let's talk about it. If you wear body armor, you already know not all plates are created equal. Today's sponsor, RMA Armament, isn't some Chinese drop shipper. It's not a rebrand of some manufactured overseas armor. It's American-made armor, made by people who know what it means to put your life behind it. The founder is a Marine Corps vet and former law enforcement officer who named the company after his kids because, as we know, the whole point of body armor is to get you home safe to your family. They've been making armor for over a decade now in a 30,000 square foot facility in Iowa using American-made materials and 100% American labor. I actually picked up their XRT plate in the Sappy cut. You notice this is thinner than anything I was issued by the US military in Afghanistan and significantly lighter. But the best part is that this, despite being so much lighter, is rated against almost every mid-size cartridge, almost every full-size standard issue rifle round, and even some armor-piercing rounds. It's made of ceramic, so you're not going to have to worry about spall, and it's available in shooter's cut and Sappy. RMA has body armor from level 3 soft armor all the way up to level 4 rated plates. Bottom line, RMA is doing it right. An American company, American-made, built by people who understand what it means to put your life behind your body armor. So hit the link in the description, check out the catalog and videos. They've got some sales, and see why RMA is called the King of Armor. Okay, so this is just a wild series of stories because, as we've pointed out, there is a lot of issues inside the Republican Party in Congress that they are sick and tired of the president's games. Not only do you have MAGA mainstays like Marjorie Taylor Greene announcing that she's just going to walk away from Congress in the beginning of January, attriting the already slim Republican majority and likely trying to get out of the sinking ship before they suffer a massive electoral defeat. But other senior GOP folks are saying, listen, I'm out, or I'm not going to accept this level of Russian acquiescence by the White House. In one example, you have GOP Representative Don Bacon. This is a centrist Republican who already said this is his last term in Congress. But he, in an interview, said that he was so disgusted by the peace plan, which he called the Witkoff Ukrainian Surrender Plan, which, as we've talked about on this channel, Steve Witkoff, Trump's special envoy, is more like special needs because he has 0 days of diplomatic experience before being thrust onto the highest stages of diplomacy. And Trump himself has said that Steve Witkoff knows nothing about Russia and has no interest in learning about Russia. Famously, instead of relying on the State Department's career Russia experts and high-level translators, Witkoff literally just took a private jet to negotiate with Putin, right? That's like, we would have fared better if literally you, a viewer of this channel, were to be selected at random and flown out to the Kremlin to talk with Putin. At least you would have had the sense to, like, call the State Department first and be like, hey, do you have somebody that, like, knows stuff about Russia? Right? Steve Witkoff didn't even do that. So to have someone like Don Bacon, who, again, if you have spent decades in Congress, as he has, you do learn a thing or two about foreign policy, right? And what Don Bacon said is that he said, in the end, I have a commitment to our constituents to fulfill my term. But he shared his anger with House Speaker Mike Johnson, but didn't mention that he was so mad, so angry, that he had thought about quitting that day. Now, I want you to understand, it's a huge turnaround to go from saying, listen, I'm going to retire at the end of my term, right, in 2026, and then leave Congress in 2027. Instead, Bacon said, I'm going to walk away tonight. And he's not the only one who has come out in this, right? Mitch McConnell, literally one of the senior Republican senator, but don't get me wrong, I fucking hate Mitch McConnell, but He sits atop chair of the Senate Rules Committee, the Defense Appropriations Committee. And what he dropped on Twitter, directly targeting the vice president, is absolutely insane. He tagged the president, by the way. He says, POTUS is right that Biden's weakness emboldened enemies like Putin. But those who think, and we've talked about the fact that I actually think McConnell's right on this. Biden was constantly letting Putin lead the dance and only really ramped up support for Ukraine after Putin would escalate the conflict, right? So Biden's weakness emboldened enemies like Putin. And he said, but those who think pressuring the victim and appeasing the aggressor will bring peace are kidding themselves. Which difficult concessions are we pressuring Russia to make, he asks. How does limiting Ukraine's defenses against future aggression increase the likelihood of enduring peace? Right? The price and stability of peace matters, and our credibility is on the line. Allies and adversaries are watching. Will America hold firm against aggression, or will we reward it? Right? He adds, conclusion, the most basic reality on the ground is that the price of peace matters. Oh, God, I hate you, Twitter. Look at this. 4 out of 4. Okay, 1 of 4 is up here. I'm told to criticize a proposed peace deal that initially hewed closely to Russia's preferred outcome is to misunderstand or misstate some critical reality on the ground, he says. So let's talk about the reality on the ground, right? He said, Putin spent a year trying to play President Trump for a fool. If administration officials are more concerned with appeasing Putin than securing real peace, then the president ought to find new advisors. Rewarding Russian butchery would be disastrous for America's interest, and capitulation like Biden's abandonment of Afghanistan would be catastrophic to a legacy of peace through strength, right? And he continues, right, that saying that the price of peace matters to Americans. Demand for Ukraine to give up territory is a fringe position among Trump voters. More popular, sanctions on Russia and support for Ukraine. This is what he showed here is recent polling data indicating that, indeed, when asked the question, should Ukraine try to regain all their territory or give up territory to end the war, which stance are you more aligned with? Well, among traditional conservatives, 50% actually have total support for Ukraine, strongly supportive of Ukraine's position, right? Whereas Russia has just 20%, half of that support. That's among conservatives. Among MAGA conservatives, there's still nearly 44% support Ukraine and just 16% support Russia. In fact, this is the spread of Republican voters, people who are going to go to the polls and swipe yes on Trump and on McConnell and other Republicans, that almost 50%, right, 46% of voters say, yeah, we want to see Ukraine win, or at least I want to see something fair and balanced, 39%. But actually favoring Russia and rewarding them for invading Ukraine is just 16%, which is wild to me, because, again, it indicates that the average Trump voter, the average conservative voter, understands that Russia is an enemy of the United States, right? Russia, whose official position is that they are against and want to destroy the United States, that they love the Soviet Union, an entity that existed to destroy the United States, private property, free markets, individual rights and liberties. All of those things were anathema, disgusting to the Soviet Union. And of course, Russia explicitly says, we believe in a Soviet ideology, a return to Soviet style, the Soviet position on the globe, right? In addition to, again, Russia's constant statements. Russia's literally like, we're at war with NATO. And somehow NATO's like, I think Russia's our friend, right? And so the fact that MAGA voters understand this, and yet despite President Trump's repeated, obvious, and transparent love of Russia, is insane to me. But the fact is that even Mitch McConnell has figured out that this is a bridge too far. You can see, in fact, even Mike Johnson is finding himself coming out and saying, quote, despite all that's happening, the Ukrainian people are fighting for their survival and inspiring all of us. We, as representatives of the United States, will work together. President Trump, Republicans, and Democrats in Congress will do everything possible for the Ukrainian people, right? And he noted that Trump is making efforts to reduce bloodshed in other regions of the world. And again, he said, we are convinced that international efforts will bring a just and lasting peace to our friends in Ukraine. Now, this is one, I want to point out the why here. And the why is important. The why is because the U.S. has a treaty-bound commitment to protect Ukrainian territorial integrity. And we sort of stuck that on the back burner. We pretend it's not real sometimes, like the Budapest Memorandum. But at this point, our NATO allies have knocked on our door and said, listen, guys, you're the United States. You're treaty bound to defend Ukraine. But also, we Europeans are threatened by this Russian aggression. And we tolerated it in 2014 when he annexed the Donbass. We tolerated it in 2008 when he annexed Georgia. But now that he's rolling into countries, he's attacking NATO allies directly, sending his armed fighter jets into NATO airspace on a weekly basis now, sending attack drones into Poland. NATO said, this is it. You're the United States. Does your word matter? Are you going to back us on this? And again, they're not like American fighter jets here. They're asking for aid, assistance, and the backing to defeat Russia, to inflict a defeat on Russia. And the fact is that the United States, every other treaty we have ever signed, is only credible because we defend every treaty we've signed. Does that make sense? The reason, I want to show you this. This is global defense spending. Now, I want to point out that China officially says they own portions of Japanese sovereign territory, of Taiwanese sovereign territory. Russia officially says it owns portions of Moldovan sovereign territory, Georgian sovereign territory, Ukrainian sovereign territory. And so when you look at these other two large countries, these large nuclear, ultra powerful countries, you can see that the only one who doesn't say, I want to own a portion of my neighbors is the United States. And we have pledged to defend the security interests of Germany, the UK, France, Japan, South Korea, Australia, Italy, right? Poland, and of Israel. My God, do we ever defend Israel? And this idea that these countries depend on the U.S. to defend their interests collectively is the glue that holds the international order together. It's the reason these dictatorships can't make headway with democracies. It's the reason why China and Russia are not able to simply roll their militaries over all of their neighbors. It's because we have this glue of all countries get together and say, listen, we disagree on stuff, but there's some things we agree on. And the guarantor of that, the final guarantor of that, is the United States. If the U.S. military politically says we don't get involved anymore, then what does that mean, right? If you subtract this out, that means that China represents a greater military threat than basically every other developed country combined, not named Russia. That's a problem. And the fear is that if the U.S. was to allow itself to be defeated, to defeat the NATO powers, and more importantly, to roll out a treaty in which how NATO operates gets dictated to it by Russia. This is, I think, one of the most grievous problems with this 28-point plan, right? Is that it's not, the 28 points, only about half deal with Ukraine itself. The remaining half include things like the G7 being forced to readmit Russia, the NATO pledging to never again admit any new member. These are things that require a fundamental renegotiation of a altering of the NATO founding treaty that says anyone can apply for membership. And once you have your enemy forcing you to rewrite your alliance's founding documents, they have won. That is a victory for them. And I think that is the primary thing that is so outrageous about this deal and why the GOP is finally saying something about it, because they're like, listen, American strength means something in the international community. The American military, people always joke. They're like, there's a meme. Let's see if I can find it here. Right? Where people say, let's see, I won't even spoil it for you because it's a pretty good meme, right? Here we go. People say, well, the US dollar isn't backed by anything. God, I hate you, Twitter, so much. And then people say me, and then there's a carrier strike group. It's true. but the thing is that that's true. People, these countries, all of those countries, you notice that they all do extensive trade deals with the United States and with each other. And if you are in that NATO, EU, Japan, South Korea bubble, your country has become fabulously rich, richer than any human society in history, right? You've experienced a rocket ship of development from 1956 to today. If you are inside that bubble, and the Russians and the Chinese seethe and cope, right? And even the Chinese, by the way, were a poor backwater nation until they got Bill Clinton to grant them World Trade Organization most favored nation status. Once they had that, once they started to enter that community of nations, their economic growth went parabolic. And the idea, though, this whole thing only works with the U.S. atop it because we also guarantee their security. It's one of the things, it's the gambit Bill Clinton made that failed. He really gambited that letting China get access to global markets would lead to them becoming more democratic, more with more civil rights and civil liberties, and eventually entering, having a military that at least was a participant in the international community, even if they weren't a named member of a treaty, not unlike Japan, right? Or Thailand would be a good example. It backfired. It never happened, right? China became fabulously rich and fabulously authoritarian. But the takeaway is that the U.S. military is the backbone for all of these countries. Why they play ball with the United States economically is because our military protects them militarily. Anyway, guys, that's all I had for right now. I'm going to keep you posted as we learn more. Thanks to GMAT Club, Henry Russier, James Porsche, Paul, Peter Fucci, and all of our Lieutenant Tier members. We could not do it without you guys. I appreciate you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.